The major difference between conifers and hardwoods is that there's usually a slight difference in the orientation of that branch collar. Hardwoods tend to come out farther. You're often making a bigger angle on that cut, where conifers, you're making a smaller angle and sometimes straight down. All right, I'm Neil Thompson with the Forestry program at the University of Maine at Fort Kent, and today we're running a workshop on pruning. So how to make the correct pruning cut so that you're protecting the branch collar of the tree, which will allow the tree to heal over the wound as quickly as possible and prevent the entrance of diseases and fungi. So do you want to get up close and look at the key anatomy here? So on this maple tree on campus at UMaine Fort Kent, we are going to prune up a couple of feet so that the lawnmower can get around here without banging off the operator's head or damaging the tree. So on this and most hardwood trees, the branch collar comes off of the trunk at an angle about like so. So I need to both support the branch so that it does not pull down, and I'm going to make that cut at an angle so that I make sure to preserve that branch collar, which is the tissue that is specialized to recover after a branch has died and seal over that wound. So while I'm supporting this branch, I'm going to estimate the angle. And make the cut at an angle maybe 20 or 30 degrees off center there. So that has left the entire branch collar, and that will seal over that wound starting this year and probably finish sealing off next spring. With this larger branch, I'm going to make a series of 3 cuts, first to relieve the weight of that branch, and then to make the cut at the correct angle. So the first cut is from below. If I were to continue this cut, my saw would pinch because the weight of this branch is pulling it down. I'm going to remove the saw, go up, out from the trunk of the tree, and come from the top. That cut below prevents the tearing of the bark, which could carry on straight down the trunk of the tree, creating a large open wound. Now I can come in at the proper angle for this branch collar. Every one is different, so you have to inspect every branch you're cutting. Now with that done, all of these wounds will heal over within 2 or 3 years. The larger one might take 3. These might heal over this year. These ones might heal over next spring. But that will allow the tree to have its best chance at a complete and healthy recovery. And now we've removed the lower branches that were in the way of the maintenance of the campus. So the major difference between conifers and hardwoods is the conifers, they also have a branch collar, but it is sometimes recessed within the tree, and it is sometimes held much closer to the trunk. With conifers, you're often making a cut more or less straight down. This one, I can see the branch collar comes out maybe 3/8 of an inch, so I'm going to be making a slightly angled cut on this one. Every branch is an individual, every tree has its own growth habits. In this case, I'm going to just come straight down at just the slightest angle to avoid that branch collar. So there you can see the protruding branch collar, and that is going to heal over here. This dead branch, there's no branch collar underneath. I can come straight down on that with no angle, directly parallel to the trunk. So that will heal over just as well, and there's no tissue loss that would have healed over there. This one has some branch collar. It's also a dead branch, but was probably recently living within the last 5 years. So I'm going to get my angle on that And I'm going to come down from the top. And match that angle, leaving most of that branch collar. This branch has a very substantial branch collar. If you zoom in on that one, you can see the angle is about like that. This is a heavier branch. I'm going to make the series of 3 cuts like I did before. First below, then from above, and that has relieved all the weight on that, and I can make this cut without risk of tearing. So I'm going to go at an angle to avoid the branch collar. So with all trees, you're avoiding that branch collar, you're leaving that intact. That specialized tissue is going to help seal over the wound, as it's adapted to do over millions of years. And the major difference between conifers and hardwoods is that there's usually a slight difference in the orientation of that branch collar. Hardwoods tend to come out farther. You're often making a bigger angle on that cut, where conifers, you're making a smaller angle and sometimes straight down. All right, so let's start pruning talks. So we're gonna move over here and see things going well and things going badly. So I'm actually gonna use my saw to gesture here. So this is a bad situation because this big long branch stub has been left here. Normally when a branch dies, the weight of that branch eventually carries it off the tree and the tree can heal over that wound. There's no weight left attached to that, so it'll just sit there forever and a day. But this one was done perfectly. It was cut off at exactly the right location that the tissue called the branch collar was able to heal around the entire circumference of that wound. So you see how there's new tissue forming all throughout. But that's going to be one of the key differences between pruning hardwoods and softwoods, because they both have a branch collar, and the branch collar is a specialized type of tissue that exists to seal over the wound when the branch has died and fallen off. If you do your pruning in such a way that your saw leaves that branch collar, then it will have the best chance to seal over that wound and heal in a timely fashion, rather than leaving an open wound that is an inroad for decay fungi, insects, and all things that cause disease. So this is essentially an open wound. This is a wound that is going to close as quickly as it can. And we have some over here that we're going to look at where the branch collar was actually cut through and cut off, which is the #1 mistake to avoid with pruning. And that leaves the wound open for many years and vulnerable to insects and diseases. So let's go take a look at some of the ones where the branch collar was cut through. And again, the big difference between hardwoods and softwoods is the orientation of that branch collar. Some softwoods actually have it recessed within the tree. Some have it more or less straight down, whereas hardwoods tend to have more of a collar out here, and you have to cut that at an angle to match that. So let's take a walk over here and see some of the ones where it was cut through. So this right here was a branch that was cut off properly. It is completely sealed over, and you can see it's just like any other piece of bark. It's completely sealed over as a good barrier to disease. So this in 5 or 10 years should look like this. So this one's just sort of a difficult situation. It was growing off at a weird angle, but you can see that the way this cut was done, you see the healing tissue around here, but in here is still flat exactly where it was cut off a couple of years ago. So there's no healing around here. This bark is loose. This bark is rotting away. There's nothing alive there. It's not in process of healing. That is going to be a permanent wound on the tree that will allow decay fungi and bugs and other disease vectors to get inside. This one here has a very nice branch collar. If you come up and look at it from this side, you can see all along here, that big fat tissue, that's all the branch collar. So that's what you want to leave when you're making your cut. You don't want to go out any farther than that. You don't want to cut into it. You want to have it sliced right down the middle. So the big object of the game today is to get totally clear on what the branch collar is, how to protect it when making the pruning cut. All right, so this is the tree that we did here. So the reason that I pruned this tree, this is a cherry. This was planted as part of a native garden situation here. We have high bush blueberries throughout all here, so it's not native garden, edible landscape, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, they were supposed to be native also.
Yeah. So this is Powell Hall at the University of Maine at Fort Kent, and this is part of our edible landscape here. These are high bush blueberries. These are native cherries. And the reason that I pruned this tree is to give more light to these blueberries. This had low branches down to here, and to talk about this, we have to talk about the concept of low shade. So where a leaf or a branch is in relation to the ground changes the dynamics of the shade that it produces on the understory. So if you take your two fingers, place them above your palm, you'll see that is a very dark shadow that your fingers are casting. As you move your hand away, you'll see that the darkness or depth of that shade is reduced. That's because the dimensions of the sun, I don't recommend you look at it, but are very much larger than the leaf or a finger that is held up here. So a canopy or a branch that is way up here is going to cast a different kind of shade than a branch down here. So by removing the shade from down low, we gave these blueberries a whole lot more light. So before I got to this one, some of these branches were ripped off. You can see the branch color is doing its best to heal around those, but some of those were damaged down here, and that's slowing it down a little bit in its healing process. Up here, where the cuts were made, I hope properly, since we're all standing here looking at them, they're healing around on the entire circumference of that wound, and I expect them to be closed either this year or next year. So if you can all come in here, this is just a mulch bed, you can step on it, and you can see this was done, when did we do this, Deb? Was it a month ago?
No. Yeah, beginning of June.
Oh, yeah.
Beginning of June. So this was done in the beginning of June, and that branch color is already beginning to seal around those wounds.
Now where like this one is broke here, could you come and just cut this and make it?
You could, but all of this is the branch color right here. So if you look in close here, you'll see where that branch was ripped off. And you can see how it's already starting to heal over itself.
So it wouldn't be worth it.
No, the big injury comes when you slice through all of this branch color. This was done a couple of years ago. You can see it's already healed over. That might have even been last year. This is a witch hazel, and lovely native species, but the snow load just struck back to nothing. So what we're going to want to do is wait for all the energy that this tree can possibly produce to be secured in the leaves and then brought down into the roots in the fall. When that has happened, you can then prune this down to a more compact shape that can be able to take that snow load, and that'll resprout in the spring from whatever we leave there or from the root mass.
What do you do with that single strand? Cut it off?
Yep, I would. If this was me, and it probably will end up being me, if you look in here, you'll see a number of broken off branches here. These have the potential to resprout, but you'll also find a bunch of little sprouts down here. You can just take this back down to about this dimension and keep on pruning that. So you see this little sprout here, that's an example of that. You just keep this to a more rounded condition rather than letting it get up and bake like this, because
Where would you cut that tall one?
I'd probably take it off. It's got some damage here. I'd probably cut it off below the lowest damage and then cross my fingers. It's pretty drastic, but if it's done at the right time of year, it should resprout. But right now, this takes so much snow load, it just pours right off of here, or somebody gets up there and shovels it right down on top of here. So this just gets pounded to death. So big, long stuff like this has no chance. So it should be pruned regularly to a more compact condition. All right, do we want to start lopping some branches off? Yes.
Question on that one. You said that there's a time of the year that's best.
Yes.
And it's after the sap has gone back into the roots. And in our area, northern Maine, what would be that month or day or?
September.
Well, yes, you could do it as after the leaves have fallen, but the best time to do almost all pruning is in the late winter or very early spring, so late February, early March, that time of year. That's because in the...
Get to the tree by then.
Well, yes, with all this down here, yeah, you're going to be limited in your options. So with this situation, you might have to do the one thing you shouldn't do and prune in the late fall. Never prune when the leaves are in color. The fall is when the most fungi and disease organisms are floating around in the environment, so you do not want to do your pruning in fall if you can help it. The best
Late
time,
fall as you get.
as late as you can possibly can. So after the frost, after maybe the first snow, then you go in and take care of it.
Now, what about the opposite? The planting, is it spring like we all believe it is? Or?
Whenever the tree is dormant, so you can plant in the fall, you can plant in the spring. If you plant in the spring with the tree in a dormant condition, it's not going to have to withstand the first winter with this old root ball in its overwintering condition. So springtime when it's dormant is the ideal time, but you can go anywhere through the summer. When you're planting in the summer, you just want to make sure you don't fertilize too late, because if it puts on new growth, then that new growth is still succulent when the first frost hits. So that's why I've planted those elm trees, but I've not fertilized them. If I stimulated further growth on them, that could lead to a lot of dieback or complete death of the tree in the wintertime. So that's why I've not done that. I did put a bunch of composted cow manure in there. I hope that doesn't spike them too much, but I would normally add nitrogen and other fertilizers to green them up, but I don't want to get them going too far. So this one is probably the trickiest situation we could find, but it's just going to keep getting schwacked back by the snow every year, so we might as well do what we can. One thing that thou shalt not ever do is top a tree, meaning if you take a tree like this and say, well, that's about 30 feet taller than I want it to be, I'll just cut off the trunk of the tree. That is how you get decay fungi going straight down into that tree. It will weaken the tree and create a hazard.
Of any tree?
Of any tree.
Well, what about the people that use like fencing with shrubberies and you always top off?
So that is when it's done properly. So you can reduce the height growth with regular pruning. So if I was to say, let's take this one. I want to keep this in a more compact condition. When it's young stuff, all day long. But you don't take a big trunk of a tree and schwack that off to nothing. If it's a hedgerow, well, yes, it's not a tall tree that's going to create a hazard as it falls over. So you can kill it slowly if you want to. But any tree, not a shrub, you would not want to just schwack that off. You see it a lot in Europe for some reason with their European plane trees. They just take all the branches off, all the limbs down to like a 4-inch top. You would think you're about to cut it down and sell it as a log, but they just keep on doing that and doing that and doing that. So if you want to restrain the height growth, you can do that by cutting like so, but you would not take the entire tree off to that. In this case, we are going to take this whole thing off because it's just going to get snapped off by the snow anyway. But that is its own special situation. It's a shrubbery anyway. So let's pick a tree over here and go through the actual pruning cuts. And I'll keep that one. All right, so this is a red maple. It's on the UMaine Fort Kent campus. And if you come up closely, you can see where this branch collar is. And I'll indicate where I'm going to make the cut with the marker here. So you see, this is the branch, this is the branch. You see where that swell is right there? So that swell right there is where I want to make the cut, just outside of that. And you can see on this point as well. So you have the tissue of the branch collar here. The cut is going to follow just outside of that. It's going to come at an angle approximately like that. But this is a pretty heavy branch. And if I was to just come straight down, this would tear the bark straight down, rip down the side of the tree, and cause a perhaps fatal injury in the long run. So we're going to first take off the bulk of this branch, and then we can easily take off the branch to the correct location without any trouble. So I'm going to start with the first cut directly underneath. What's going to happen if I keep going upwards here? I'm going to get jammed. So I'm not going to go very far here. So this weight of the branch is going to pull this down. It's going to pinch the blade of that saw. So that's cut number one. Cut number two, slightly up from there. Coming down from the top.
No.
And now the branch is off.
So what was wrong with the branch to begin with?
It was in this guy's way.
There'll be a lot of that going on here shortly.
Yep, it's really, it's in this guy's way.
Yeah.
Every time he goes around here, he hits his head, and that makes him sad.
Yeah.
We don't need lawsuits from Eric getting decapitated.
Inches is better than the bottom, man.
Yeah.
Yep. So I've really gotten used to pruning low branches because my father has a riding lawnmower. I planted a bunch of trees, a lot of fruit trees on the property, but every time I visit, it's, can you prune off this branch? I hit it every time. Sure. So now the weight is removed. Now we can figure out the proper angle for this cut. And that is not going to be a 90-degree angle. There's a little bit of a obstruction there. That's just going to be a pain. I'm going to slice through that a little bit. That's just bark. There's no tissue there to damage. So you see the angle I'm going at there?
Yep. Yep.
So the saw that I'm using is a Japanese reverse cut saw. It cuts only on the pull, and it leaves a very narrow wound, or narrow kerf. The reason the Japanese did it this way is they had a shortage of iron ore, and the reverse cut, the tension or the force is only ever on the pull. So you'll see this bends very easily. Takes very little steel to make. And that's that. So that has gone, got to get a picture of that, right along the line I drew on there, so I'm happy with that. But this has left the branch collar intact. This will heal over, I would guess, in a period of 3 years. Very healthy tree, a lot of foliage up here. We do have an injury here
I was just going to ask you.
that is going to be an issue. Oh, hello.
Look at the earwigs.
Yeah, that's full of earwigs, that's lovely.
Yeah. Wow.
But you can also see here, this is a healthy tree that is healing over its injury.
It's too bad it's all split in here, huh?
Yeah, it'll cover itself up on that.
Now
But
those earwigs, are they going to eat throughout that whole thing and just kill it, or?
the earwigs will do no damage to the tree. They're just going to,
The
they
bark.
like that moist condition,
Yeah.
but they don't chew wood.
Oh, okay,
They're
cool.
not like termites or carpenter ants.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do this one as well, and you can see in the same way. Come right up here and have a look at this branch color. Every one is a little bit different, and you just need to get used to figuring out. You can run with your fingers along here. Where it begins to swell is very clear once you get used to feeling for that branch collar. So that branch collar has got to be left. If I was to saw straight down through here,
cut
it might take 5, 10, 15 years to heal if it ever did at all. Because
Might kill it before, huh?
it might kill the entire tree. So again, we'll go through the sequence of cuts. So first from below, then from above, and that one went perfectly. So again, if this was just cut straight down, it would tear that bark down and leave a big strip here. It looks like that might have happened here before. I don't know what happened here, but something took a strip down here. That might just be a crack from frost, really.
This here, could it have been two stems?
Yeah, that's where these two come together. As the wind blows, it forces them together and
I know
apart.
People that split apart.
Mhm.
Stone load. I just
Yep.
took a rope and put it around it.
Yep, yeah, that's pretty well all you can do. So this one, you can see the branch collar is about, see there, Eric?
Yeah.
See there, and there, going at a slightly steeper angle than the last branch. So every one is different. You have to inspect them, make sure they're ready to go. Let's see. Going gentle in the last few strokes here. So that is off. The branch collar is intact and no tearing because it supported that as it was coming down. So Eric, now you can mow around here. There's this one more
That's all
little
right.
obstruction here. Little branch like this, no need to do the 3 cuts. You can just hold the thing, observe the branch collar. So now I'm just holding that, supporting the weight so it doesn't tear down. Getting there with just the tip of the saw because I'm running into the main stem of that branch. Supporting it all the way, and now it's removed. So now, clear field of mowing around here,
Thanks a lot.
and a nice little pile of branches to pick up.
Yeah, that's mine.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of our like us are like me. I'm going to be cutting a lot of those small trees, like the branches on those. Like we have clippers,
Yep.
so all I got to do is just be careful of the collar before I clip them.
So let's take a look at some of the smaller branches on this maple here, and we'll just demonstrate some of the proper cuts with the pruners. The branch collar and these bypass pruning shears, you have sort of the hammer and the anvil here. So I place the cutting edge directly against that, and boom. So that one went a little there, and you can see here, Eric, there's a slight tear. That's one of the reasons why I like using the saw over the bypass pruners.
Now, where can we get a pair of those?
You can get them on Amazon. You might be able to get them in a hardware store. I haven't seen them at SW Collins,
Yeah, cool.
but I'm sure they could get them in. But yeah, they're about $40 for a one of the smaller folding saws. Completely worth it. I have like 5 of these things. One's attached to my cruising vest, one always lives in the truck, one always lives in my wife's car. Because everywhere I go, somebody's gonna ask me, can you prune this tree?
You've got branches, yeah.
So, especially in the summertime, because the vascular cambium of this tree is actively dividing and creating both bark and wood, it's slippery. So we're still in what you call the peeling season. We're at the tail end of it. It's worst in the spring. But if anybody's ever felled trees in the spring, if one tree brushes against another, the bark will just slough right off. And that's because that cambium is active and is ready to fall apart. So with the pruning shears, that is putting a pulling pressure on the bark. And when you're doing that in summertime, it will pull a little bit if you don't get the angles just right or if you're slightly unlucky. So that's why I prefer using the saw, especially in this season. So this one, I think we're pretty good. I'm gonna take off this one because that's gonna be in your way. So Eric, here's a marker.
Yep.
Draw where you would make that cut. Yeah, let's see.
Maybe on this side, like right here, maybe.
So you're pretty well right on there. I might go a touch farther in on that one. I'm gonna make the cut on the inside of that.
This part right here, so
Yep.
I thought this would.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go, and you'll see where I go in relation to your mark. For this one, I'm just doing one cut because it's pretty small. I can hold on to that easily. So you see I've cut just to the inside of your mark there and pretty well straight through it on that side. So that's left the branch collar, everything's
So now
intact and happy.
If I were to cut it like a little bit more than the collar,
That would be bad.
yeah, okay, because the collar won't reach around it to
Correct.
heal it.
Yeah, so you want to be right up against the edge of that.
Okay.
This one here, very difficult branch to prune because it's going up at a very sharp angle. That's one that if you can stand to leave it and maybe
If
prune.
anything, it'll be stuff like this.
Yeah, so that I'm actually going to prune the branch, one. And again, you see how this is, these are, I sharpened these last night, they are razor sharp. I tested, I can shave hair with these.
Oh, nice.
But it's still, in this time of year, not ideal. So I'm going to use the saw even for the smaller branch.
Because the clippers we have are huge.
Yeah, so they'll probably do some damage if you get some of these to do them instead. And I can just lend you one because I have an abundance.
Okay.
But if you get yourself one of those, that'll be a
that'd
lot
be the way
better
to
for the
go.
trees in the long run.
Okay.
All right, so let's see, yes.
Now, and I know a lot of people up here, when they do pruning, they'll paint it or do something to seal it. Is there a sealer, or should it just be left?
The recommendation after some side-by-side trials is to leave it alone. So unless you have a known disease vector that is going to bring a Dutch elm disease. They do recommend using a sealant for Dutch elm disease trees, but anything else, leave it alone. Just walk away. The sealants often hold moisture in places where it shouldn't be. It gets in the way of the tree as it's healing over itself. The tree is naturally able to heal wounds as long as you leave the correct tissues in place. Otherwise, no amount of paint will solve a bad pruning cut. And if you have the proper pruning cut and too much of the wrong kind of sealant, that can get in the way and cause more problems than it solves. So my line is no sealant unless you have a known disease like Dutch elm disease that you're trying to avoid.
So it goes back to the original one that you showed us a while ago. The timing of the year that the trees are pruned is real crucial.
Absolutely.
Now the same with fruit trees?
The same with
painting, no nothing?
No painting, no nothing. With fruit trees, you always do fruit trees in the late winter. There's more diseases of fruit trees than there are of red maple. In terms of there's fire blight with pear, there's all sorts of stuff that can get into an orchard. If you are pruning trees that have fire blight or some other known disease, you want to have alcohol or some other cleaning agent handy. And between trees or even between branches, you want to clean the saw off, disinfect the saw, and a spritz bottle of just 70% isopropyl alcohol, spritz the tool down, make sure that you're not transferring the blight from one tree to the next. Orchards are tricky. So for all trees, the top priority for the allocation of the sugars from photosynthesis is to heal over an injury. I've seen trees that were growing in the understory that were shaded, they had almost no energy left, but they were still trying to heal wounds. So it is the tree's #1 priority to seal over that so it's not vulnerable to insects and diseases. And that's true for any part of the tree, but this branch collar here is specially adapted to seal over the loss of that branch.
Now the way this is open and that, there's like, can this split and kill the tree?
This is healing well. So you see all of that, it's going to keep on doing that.
Curl up over that?
Yeah, it's just going to keep curling up all over that as long as no fungi get in there and explode that canker further. There's what we call exploding canker fungi, which do almost exactly what they sound like. They'll get into a wound like that and just keep killing back. It turns into this really interesting looking, well, it's just like this, but could go up to 10 times or it dies back and seals over, dies back, tries to seal over.
Wow.
Fascinating disease complex.
We don't have any of those on campus, right?
Not that I've seen. So let's take a look at where, let's see, maple. And it was, had this large limb, it died last year. It was pruned off and it was done as well as could be expected. Once you get into something of this size, there's no good way to do it. So it was a move of necessity. You can see this bark is all dead. There's no healing in here. That bark is just holding moisture against that, introducing more rot. If you look along this side, you will see there's some living tissue on this side. There is a good piece of branch collar that's adjacent to that cut. It is healing over on this side. But this all here, this tree, we're gonna have to plant the tree in memory of the tree planted in commemoration of...
How long do you give this tree to live?
It could fall over tomorrow or it could last 10 years. There's no safe tree, but this tree, you see there's exposed bark there. There was a mushroom that grew out of that limb last year. There's decay all through this tree.
Come all over. Look, if you look at the top, there's a whole bunch of dead branches up there.
Yeah, the tree is not long for this world, but a tree can survive in poor condition for many years. Is it a safety hazard? Yes.
Now, what's the idea that we've always had? What's your explanation on that? Why do we plant always so close to the buildings or so close to the sidewalks?
Because people like shade.
So you disagree with planting close to the buildings?
So in my home, not even a bulb goes up next to the house. There's granite around the edge, no shade, no leaves going in the gutters, no branches falling on the house. The trees go over there. The house is here. All the conifers that we have, with the best of intentions, lovely idea, but the snow hits them every year. It gets shoveled off straight down on top. We're going to be working on replacing a lot of this with bulb gardens. It can die straight back to the ground, can take the snow. Anyway, let's find some trees here. We actually have some nice spruce along here, and that'll show us some of the other branch color issues for conifers. Eric, would you like to try one of these?
So this one I should cut underneath?
Yep,
Or-
so you do your first underneath cut
Yep.
here and then relieve all the tension there, or since this is a dead branch, you could support it with one hand and get a earwig going at you there.
Should be good, right?
And then slightly to the outside of it.
Oh, okay. Should I go at an angle?
No, just straight down, and that'll cause it to separate out cleanly in such a way that it can't bounce back into the tree very easily. Yeah. So now all the pressure is relieved on that branch, and you can plan your cut, and boom. So again, the big difference with the conifer versus the hardwood is the branch color is often straight up and down,
Yeah.
sometimes recessed into the tree.
It sticks out quite a bit more too then.
Yep, that one is protruding
Actually, this one is
quite a lot on that one,
than that
less on that one.
Yeah.
Every one is different.
Okay. Now, I probably could have went more, right? Or is it?
No, that is exactly right. So
Okay.
you see all of that branch color is left. You can
Yeah.
count the rings and see how old that is, but all of that is ready to
Okay.
go and seal right over that.
Okay,
There's
good.
no extra stub coming out that it will struggle with. Let's see. Go for another one if you want.
Sure. This one's quite a bit different. Should I cut this one out first,
Yep.
probably? Did I go too far?
No, that's just right.
Okay, good. Okay, so this one's gonna have to be right here.
Okay, see it's just starting to settle down there. So you go parallel to that, so a little more that way.
This one?
So if you hold there,
What, a couple inches over?
It's like probably like
couple
half inch.
half an inch to an inch. You know, some people say 3 inches, some people say half an inch, some people go straight down, but in one way or another, you're making those cuts match up in such a way that they break cleanly.
Sawwork's pretty good.
Yeah, it's a nice piece of equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all to prevent tearing of the bark to pull down.
Thinking right here.
That looks pretty good to me.
Now, do these things ever get dull? So
Yeah.
what do? You just replace them?
Yep, the blade
Replace the
screws
blade?
off and new blade goes in.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're laser sharpened, so it's
Yeah, they work. This works really good.
can't just throw it on a whetstone and
No
fix
doubt.
it up.
Yeah.
There's a lot of insects in that Scotch pine there that near the wires. Would that require the light company to come?
This is all going to come out as part of the
Removal of the house.
removal.
Yeah.
So,
So this worked out pretty good here.
yeah, that is looking good. So let's pop up to the corner here and see if we can actually make ourselves a little bit useful. Watch it. All right, could somebody support this branch for me? So this one is going straight across the sidewalk, so I'm going to remove it. All there is to it. Good. And now this one's already in the sidewalk. All right, so that's actually going to be a good example in here if we want to get in that. Let's see. Without wrecking your microphone. So this one is also leaning into the sidewalk. This one has a much more developed branch collar, making it very obvious where the cut should be made. So you see how swollen up that is? this branch is already sort of low on light. It's in a condition where it is likely to die in order to just allow the tree not to have any wasteful parts on it. If the branch is not producing enough sugar for its own maintenance, it will die and fall off and allow the tree to focus its energy on the higher parts that are more productive. So I'm going to do the 3 cuts from below, from above, and now we can see the branch color very, very clearly on this one. Make the cut, and a clean wound with an intact branch collar. And a clear sidewalk. Yeah, so let's do some corrective pruning on this one. So this one, the sidewalk is right here. If anybody was to do something silly on a bicycle and fall into this, there is a sharp protruding object here, which is maybe not the best thing for the nightly news, but we're going to correct that right now.
Is anything live here?
Not much is alive except back down to that branch collar. So you can see right there. Hopefully that's still alive, but you can do a corrective after the fact. Pretty well straight down on that one.
So tomorrow, like I plan on doing a bunch of branch cutting. Would I be able to use that thing?
Yeah, I'll sit with you.
Awesome.
Yeah, the one that I brought out here is the one with the already bent blade. So if it bends, just bend it back. Don't feel bad about it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Not close enough?
That looks pretty good. You could have gone a little farther down, but I see what you were looking at there. It's done that because that part of it was already dead. So that's not on you. So had that been a living branch that you were pruning, you would have had it just right. So we've got an oak here that's leaning into the sidewalk again. Jeff, I think you're up.
So I would, about here, try to come out over here.
Yeah, so you're gonna go at an angle about like that. So it's gonna come about like so.
If I can. I don't have much room to get in there.
There we go. And
Oh,
oh wait, there's more.
you're just warming up, man.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I'll put you to work.
I usually start here.
Yeah, you usually start here.
Yeah. Like this one. Like this one here. This was Jeff.
Yeah, very nice, very nice.
What do you think? I could have gone in at a different little angle, I think, up here.
Yeah, I think that looks about right, actually. So let's have you do straight down to the bottom here.
Wait. This one's already dead, but it don't matter. Did you get his face?
All right, so we've got one more that's leaning into there. That's up there. So I'm gonna do the
You're gonna go to hell, you lied to me.
3 cuts.
Oh,
And-
sorry, you.
There we go, good.
Working against you here.
All right, so now we have the sidewalk clear there. Let's take a look here. So again, first cut underneath. Second cut to the outside of that. So that has prevented tearing of the bark here. The branch collar is observed here. It's gonna be a straight down cut. That's pretty common on conifers. It's more often a straight down cut where hardwoods will be at an angle like so.
You gotta watch him all the time.
So, zip, zip, zip. So there with the branch collar intact, ready to be healed over.